What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflay video. We got to talk about these nerfs that came in to the God comp that everybody has been running right now in Mythic Plus. We're going to talk about all these nerfs here. Some are pretty insane. There's a couple of buffs hidden there, too. But, yeah, if you take a look at, like, Radar.io, you can see the ranks here of everybody. And it's Guardian Druid, it's Holy Paladin, it's Augvoker, it's Shadow Priest, and it's Fire Mage. Those are literally every single one of them. Even if you keep going, it does. There are a few more later on, but look at this. The top 40 are basically all the same. They are, in fact, all the same. There's nothing changes here. Oh, there's a little DH that squeaked in there. Look at that. So you can see Blizzard was not excited about that, and so they've made some changes. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about some of the other buffs as well and why they aren't potentially really that great at all when it comes to just buffing certain specs damage. They need to buff other things. So let's talk about it here. Death Knight, Unholy damage going up. This is just their AoE damage here at Epidemic, and then Bursting Swords. I don't think anybody really takes Bursting Swords from what I understand, so it's mostly just Epidemic damage, which is great. But Unholy's not in a terrible place right now, but like I don't know. I don't think this is going to necessarily change anything. Like, it's good. It's good. It's not. It's kind of. I don't know. It's not nothing, but it's not really. It's not going to necessarily change the God comp, right? I don't think this makes it squeak into a DPS spot. Guardian Druid. This is part of the God comp here, getting nerfed. Thrash damage reduced by 8%. Raise damage reduced by 8%. So that's a good nerf to their AoE damage. But again, as I'm going to talk about a lot in this video, one of the biggest reasons you take a Guardian Druid is because of its durability and its extra healing that it provides now. Just with the kit, the big regrowths that you can give to people, and then after the wildfire healing is just absolutely crazy. So it also has a battle res. It has Mark of the Wild. There's a lot of really good reasons. Some good CC in there. So I don't think that nerfing their damage by a bit here is going to make them stop being taken, because they're being brought to keys for other reasons. Yes, their damage is also exceptional. You know, maybe you'll see more Demon Hunters squeaking in, as we can see if we go to the, what was it, up to the 60th one? Yeah, there on the level 59 is the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Maybe you'll see some Vengeance Demon Hunters squeaking in a little bit more, but it's just Guardian Druids. Oh, look at them all, because they just end up doing so much extra damage. So, or they already have lots of damage. Nerfing this isn't really going to change a lot of that, and they bring all those other buffs. Demon Hunter doesn't have a battle res, right? Demon Hunter doesn't have a verse buff. So, I don't know. I don't think this really changes things too much. Evoker. Here's a big one. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Sorry, guys. We're looking at this is kind of strange to me. Breath of Aeons accumulates 10% of the damage done instead of 15. So 5% down. Fate Mirror's chance to proc went down 5% as well. This is a little bit weird, right? Oh, sorry. I keep pressing this button. Because, let me just show you a dungeon that I did on the Survival Hunter. Look, here's my damage overall. I did have an Augvoker with me. Look at the Fate's Mirror stuff. So Fate Mirror was 1.3% of my damage. Breath of Aeons was 1% of my damage. Breath of Aeons is just the extra buff that they give you when they fly over top of enemies. The reason that you're bringing an Augvoker is because they're giving everybody main stat, like a crazy amount of main stat, which is buffing all of my other damage. That's from the Ebon Might buff, right? And the Prescience buff. These things, this is why you're bringing it, because of the crazy damage that it gives you here. And you're also bringing it because of the shields that it's going to give everybody. Chrono Ward, Molten Blood on the tank. These are absolutely insane amounts of healing and shielding that you're bringing to the group. It keeps the tank really healthy. So this is why you're bringing it, not the little Breath of Aeons and Fate Mirror buff, like extra damage buff. So I don't really understand why they're doing this. 5% off of these two particular things does not matter. I don't think it matters. Yes, it's a slight nerf, but it's not going to take Augvoker out of the equation. So I don't really understand what they're doing there. Kind of weird, honestly. I know that these things probably do more damage than they did on my Hunter, but again, the point is it's just really weird. I don't know. Marksman Hunter, moving forward here, multi-shot damage, explosive shot damage, and trick shot getting buffed a little bit. I thought the AoE damage on Marksman Hunter was okay. Again, they're kind of missing the point here, right? Are you really going to bring a Marksman Hunter into a key versus the other, like a Fire Mage or an S-Priest or an Augvoker? No, why would you bring a Hunter? They don't have very many defensive abilities at all. Their utility is actually okay in terms of like their CC. You got a stun, an AoE knockback you can get rid of enrages and magic effects. You have another interrupt with scatter shot, very good for incorp week, by the way. You have binding shot, I guess. You can misdirect so you don't take any damage. You have utility in terms of turtle. You can turtle mechanics if you need to, but the reality is Hunter just does not have it compared to Augvoker, Fire Mage. Fire Mage giving everybody AoE shields now, having mass invisibility if you need it. Nobody uses it, but it is there. The defenses on a Mage are insane, right? Alter Time, Mirror Image giving you defense, greater invisibility. Like, completely ridiculous, their defensives. They have Lust, they have Intellect, Arcane Intellect that they give everybody. Hunter doesn't give anybody a buff. Like, imagine if Marksman Hunter, or imagine if all Hunters could bring a talent that made your pet battle res an ally. That would be really cool. Imagine if Marksman Hunter in particular had a passive bonus that said the range of all allies' attacks and abilities goes up by 5 yards. So now all your melee people have 5 extra yards of range. All your range people have 5 extra yards. Like, that would be kind of unique and interesting, wouldn't it? Then the melee people would stop getting hit by melee mechanics, except for me, because I'm always getting hit by frontals. There's nothing to avoid that. But they're just not necessarily changing the right stuff. Yes, the damage is buffed. That's great. Is that going to change the god comp? No. Is that going to change? Is that going to, like, help the average player in terms of their damage output? Yeah, it will, and that's great. That is a good thing. I just think, like, if they really want to shake up the meta, because they're nerfing the meta. That's what they're doing. I think they should just buff everybody else and give us, like, actually interesting utility that matches the utility that's coming from the god comp. That's why people are bringing S-Priest and Augvoker and Fire Mage and Guardian Druid and Holy Paladin, because the utility that's coming out of those guys is insane. It's actually crazy. So, kind of the wrong change here. Fire Mage getting nerfed. Again, part of the god comp. Everything getting nerfed, including Living Bomb, which is fine. People don't take Living Bomb, but you get a free proc on Living Bomb. That's why it's getting nerfed. Frost also getting nerfed. The AoE damage from Frost I thought was kind of like its real strong point. So I'm a little bit annoyed that they're nerfing this, because like that's what makes Frost really good in my opinion. Their single target's kind of lacking a little bit. Obviously Glacial Spike is really, really good. Don't get me wrong. But I like their AoE damage a lot. It's kind of annoying. But anyway, this is interesting. I don't think... Well, okay. I think that of the 5 in the God comp, Fire Mage could be the one that you potentially replace, because it's getting a 10% nerf. I don't think you're necessarily going to replace any of the other ones, because the utility coming out of a Fire Mage is not as good as the Holy Paladin or the Guardian Druid or the S-Priest. We'll get to that in a minute. So we'll see. You could potentially change Fire Mage out for Ret Paladin, which is getting a buff here. Maybe Rogue, which is getting a buff down here. Maybe Warrior. I don't really know. Probably not, to be honest, because Arcane Intellect is really good. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But of the 5 of them, this might be the one that you nerf, or that you swap out. Holy Paladin, big nerfs here. All healing by 5%. Light's Protection. This is the damage reduction that was when you were glimmering people. It was giving damage reduction as if Holy Paladin needed more. That's getting nerfed, okay? By about 50% almost. Overflowing Light now creates an Absorb Shield for 30% of glimmers over healing instead of 50. That's a pretty big deal, honestly. Tears Deliverance now increases healing taken by 15%, was 25%. So again, nerfing that. Blessing of Summer causes your attacks to deal 20% additional damage as Holy was 30, so they're nerfing the damage of Holy Paladin as well. Blessing of Summer always counted as your damage. Fading Light, this is the personal shield that you get when you spend Holy Power. Creates an Absorb Shield, right? for the 3% of the, yeah, by the generator, sorry, was 10%. Goes down to 3%. This is, I mean, I honestly think this is warranted. This shield was insanely strong. But again, nerfing that by 70%. Fading Light got nerfed by 70%. Okay? Righteous Judgment now has a 30% chance to activate Consecration, was 50. I don't really know why this has changed, honestly. The point of this talent is to activate Consecration. Why nerf that? Either get rid of it entirely or don't touch it. I don't really understand that at all. Consecration damage down by 25%. That is a lot of your AoE damage. A lot of it is Consecration, honestly. So that's a pretty insane change as well. Yeah, I think that this is pretty massive. Let me just swap to my Pally really quickly here. I think these changes are pretty crazy strong, pretty crazy for Paladin. Is this going to get rid of Paladin, Holy Paladin, in terms of the God comp? I don't know. Here's what they didn't touch. They still have 1 minute sack. They still have Bop. They still have Divine Shield. They still have their own defensives, right? Like, they still have things like Beacon. 1 minute sack is completely broken, by the way. Like, also, you can buff sack further by taking Echoing Blessings. So now my Blessing of Sacrifice reduces damage taken by 45 freaking percent. 45%. That is insane. I still have my personal defensive with Divine Protection on a 42-second cooldown, which is completely insane. I have Divine Shield that I can just pop if I ever need to just get out of harm's way and continue to heal everybody. I still have a huge Lay on Hands that I can give people. I still have Aura Mastery. Reduces all damage taken by 15%. That is so incredibly strong. And then all of my healing cooldowns, things like the Hand of Divinity, this new cooldown, Daybreak, Tears Deliverance, they're all incredibly strong still. The tier set bonus buffing Holy Prism is completely crazy as well. I mean, I just don't really think that this thing is going to get dethroned because it has so much utility and it has so much damage reduction. That's what you need at the higher keys. You just need to reduce all damage that's being taken by people. That's what really gets you through those keys. Now, this might get replaced by Disc Priest. If, let's say, you get rid of your Mage, you could potentially give it, put Ret Paladin in there. Divine Storm damage up, Wake of Ashes damage up, Consecration damage up. So maybe Ret Paladin replaces Fire Mage. Let's just say it does, okay? Then you could also, now you have a Ret Paladin, which can bring things like Bop. It could bring things like Sack. And it has its own Divine Shield. It has a good kick, yada, yada, yada. It's got all that good stuff. It has some of the utility, like Freedom. Freedom is so good in this particular season. So if you bring Ret Paladin, you get rid of your Holy Paladin. Then you could potentially bring in Disc Priest. Let's move over to Disc Priest here. This is potentially where the meta could shake up a little bit. So, first of all, Vampiric Embrace getting nerfed by 10%. Used to heal everybody for 50%. Now it's 40%. And the cooldown on it is also getting nerfed. So, instead of Sandland giving it the 45, it always down to 30. So, a little bit of a nerf there. Not the most insane nerf, but definitely a nerf. Discipline Priest. Atonement healing goes up to 40% of the damage done instead of 36% of the damage done. That's a pretty big deal. That's a lot. That's the main way that you're going to be healing people, right, for the Atonement. So that's actually quite a bit of healing, of buff there. Again, maybe this is where the meta shakes up a little bit. You bring in a Discipline Priest instead of a Holy Paladin, and then you bring in a Ret Paladin instead of that Mage. Potentially, that shakes up the meta a little bit. And I don't know, we could start to see some changes. I think that's maybe the only place really realistically where you're going to start to see the change. Disc Priest getting a big buff. Again, Disc Priest is really strong. They're very similar to Holy Paladin because they have all the damage reduction coming through, and they have a bunch of shields. They have a bunch of really, really good shields. Luminous Barrier also got buffed. I don't think you're ever going to take it, but it is a thing that you could take, potentially, if you wanted to get rid of your Power Barrier. But again, you have damage reduction as a Disc Priest as well. You have 2 charges of Pain Suppression if you want it. Pain Suppression is a 40% DR. Are you kidding me? A 40 freaking % DR. So you can have 2 charges of it, okay? And your Power Word Shield reduces the cooldown of it. Then you also have Barrier, another damage reduction, as long as your team coordinates well enough to be able to get together. And then, of course, you have Rapture. So I just think, like, Disc Priest is probably in a better situation now. Your Atonement Healing is, instead of it being 36%, it's going to be that 40% now. So we'll see. Maybe Disc Priest gets in there in terms of shaking up the meta a little bit. I don't know what to see. Holy Priest is now getting a massive change. Let me just switch to my Holy here to show you. Let's read it, though. Rhapsody now stacks once every second, instead of every 2 seconds. Causes Holy Nova to deal 20% increased damage per stack instead of 10%. And then Rhapsody now highlights Holy Nova while at 20 stacks. Look at this thing. This is crazy. This is a massive part of your AoE damage, and it contributes to your AoE healing. So Holy Nova just does a big AoE, a bunch of damage and healing around you. Rhapsody makes it do even more. Look at this. Every 2 seconds, damage of your next Nova goes up by 10% and the healing by 20%. Now, when the patch goes live, it's going to be every 1 second, which stacks up twice as fast. The damage of your next Holy Nova is increased by 20% instead of 10%. So now, you can see this thing stacking right here. Once this gets fully stacked, it'll be twice as fast. Instead of stacking all the way up over a 40-second period of time, it's going to stack in a 20-second period of time, which is really crazy. So now, instead of my Holy Nova doing 200% more damage, it'll do 400% more damage. And again, it fully stacks in half the time. I think this is actually pretty good. Look at the damage that Holy Nova did for me. 12% of my damage. And then in terms of healing, it ended up doing 4% of my healing. So this is a very good change for Rhapsody. I think Holy Priest is going to be very, very strong. Again, the problem with Holy Priest is that they don't give any damage reduction. And that's what you need on a healer. You just need that on a healer. So I don't know. Again, there's problems fundamentally with the way that some of these other specs function, and I don't think it's going to necessarily shake up the God comp. Maybe the Disc Priest makes its way in there. Shadow Priest, Vampiric Touch damage reduced by 20%, Shadow Word Pain damage reduced by 15%, Shadowy Apparition damage reduced by 15%. This is kind of insane. Healing from Vampiric Embrace is no longer reduced by 20% in PvP combat because they are nerfing Vampiric Embrace overall. So, this is kind of a gutting. Honestly, this is a bit of a gutting, and I don't think that Shadow Priest deserves to have this much taken away from them. Shadow Priest has the best utility of any of the damage dealers in keys, right? Augvoker, Shadow Priest, and Fire Mage. Shadow Priest definitely has the best utility. Vampiric Embrace, Mass Dispel, Mind Soothe, Dominate Mind. And then they have Vampiric Embrace. Of course, there's just really, really good utility from a Shadow Priest. Power Infusion, I didn't even talk about that, right? So this targeting their damage just kind of makes it really feel awful to play Shadow Priest, and I don't think you're going to get rid of Shadow Priest in your comp because it has this really good utility. Again, they're targeting the damage from this spec, but not the utility. The reason you bring it is because of the utility. Now, I think you still have to bring Shadow Priest because of the utility, but the damage just feels awful now. It's just going to feel awful to play. So that's a little bit disappointing. This is like your top 3 damage in keys. So I don't know. It feels really bad for Shadow Priest, in my opinion, honestly. Maybe you shake it up and don't take Shadow anymore, but I think you have to. So we'll see. Rogue, Outlaw Rogue, all ability damage by 5%, auto attack damage by 5%. Rogues auto attack very quickly, so this is a pretty big change. I don't know. I don't think it's enough to bring Rogue into the fold. I don't know. We'll really have to see. 5% is just not too crazy. I'm not entirely sure. Warrior. All Warrior specs get Ravager and Thunderous Roar damage by 8%. Thunderous Roar is like a huge ability for every Warrior. So that's a pretty big buff there. And then Fury gets buffed to their AoE slightly. So I don't think it's going to bring Fury into the fold either. Their utility is just not super great. You have, obviously, the extra health you can give everybody with your big shout. You do have an AoE fear, but, like, you don't have, like, we're talking about the difference between you and a Shadow Priest, right? It's just not there. Shadow Priest gives everybody 3% more health, right? You have that automatic buff you're giving the entire team. You have Mass Dispel, you have Mind Soothe, you have PI, you have Vampiric Embrace. I just kind of insane, right? That's why you're bringing this Shadow Priest. So, all in all, guys, I think the God comp might change a little bit. Guardian Druid is staying the same. Augvoker is staying the same. Fire Mage might change. Maybe you swap it out for a Rep Paladin, potentially. But maybe you just flip to Arcane Mage. I mean, you could do that too, probably. Discipline Priest might get subbed in. That might be the only big change there. Discipline Priest might be coming in. Other than that, I honestly don't think you can get rid of Shadow, but maybe you sub in Disc Priest for Shadow Priest. And then, obviously, you'd have to change your Holy Paladin, change that to a Rep Paladin so that you still get the Paladin utility. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. They definitely gutted a lot of things. I think they made a lot of the wrong changes, though. They're not gutting the right stuff. And they're not buffing, more importantly, they're not buffing the right abilities on all the other specs. Like, give me some interesting utility on Hunter, please, so I can bring my Hunter and feel like I'm actually contributing to the team. That's really what I kind of want. So let me know what you guys think in those comments down below. Thank you so much again for watching. I love you all. I will see you in the next one.